Airborne is now in position.
We will liberate Iraq.
Dean Staley and Joe Caffrey are on the ground in Kuwait.
Be advised, we got a few small arms, fire overhead.
Ground attack! Ground attack!
Threats inevitable out here.
We deploy with 301 soldiers, and that we will go home with 301 soldiers.
We're in Iraq.
Good evening. I'm Harris Faulkner. It has been 3 months since the United States invaded Iraq and deposed Saddam Hussein. The war itself officially lasted only a month, but for those involved, it was a life-changing experience. Those people included KSTP reporter Dean Staley and photojournalist Joe Caffrey, the only Twin Cities crew to be embedded with the U.S. military. For 10 weeks, Dean and Joe documented the war from their position with the Army's 101st Airborne Division. They brought us exclusive reports that took us inside the conflict, introduced us to the soldiers and to the Iraqi people. Tonight, we're going to spend the next hour with Dean and Joe. They were our eyewitnesses to war. When Saddam Hussein first fired missiles at American forces, Dean and Joe were on the ground with troops in Kuwait, a position that put them in the line of fire.
It was only a couple of minutes later that we got the word and the alarm went out. Lightning, lightning, lightning. That means there's a possibility of another Scud attack.
What's going on now? What's going on now?
In fact, that's what we're hearing right now, that there's another Scud attack. Lightning, lightning, lightning. We're going to put on our gas masks, and we'll be getting in trenches very, very soon. Joe, you get a mask up.
As soon as you hear the alarm, nobody is thinking. Everybody's just acting. I mean, you pull a gas mask off your hip, you put it on, that's the first thing you do. You start to make sure your chemical suit's on. So it was immediate. There's no thing. It wasn't until well after the event that we sort of had time to think back and think, wow, that was close.
We'll be back with you, but we'll be in trenches down here. Why don't you lock it down on the trench? Lock it on the trench. Under the truck.
Another frightening scene there. This is live from Camp Thunder in the Kuwaiti desert. Dean Staley, Eyewitness News reporter and anchor, and photojournalist Joe Caffrey. As you can tell, they are now ducking for cover. You can hear the sirens in the background. Once again, apparently Scud missiles appear to be coming toward the camp where our crew is stationed with the 101st Airborne.
As soon as you'd fall asleep, 2 in the morning, the lightning would happen. We'd be back out in the ditch for 45 minutes, and that just seemed continual.
Just trying to report back what we're seeing here. As I pan the camera around, people are entrenched next to the tents. They just finished building these trenches, digging these trenches out in the last hour. This is the 4th attack we've had.
It was terrifying. We were very unsure at that time if Saddam was going to unleash his chemical weapons.
There was a moment when we were all down in the survival trenches, and someone for some reason said, you know, it's inbound, it's coming.
Hey, listen up, keep your heads down. There is a Scud in the air. They do not know where it's headed to.
The people sort of got as low as they could in the ditches and were really pushing up against each other, trying to get as low as they possibly could. And that was a scary moment. When I heard the first explosion, I thought it was inbound. I thought there were mortars coming into the camp, because that's what it sounded like. One of these Patriots misfired and exploded over the camp, and there was this enormous burst. And so I came out of the tent thinking there were going to be craters forming and there'd just be more and more explosions. I didn't realize until, you know, a split second later that, no, that was the Patriot headed outbound. There are more Patriots headed outbound. They're going out to intercept some sort of missile that's on its way.
I'm just trying to remain calm and listen to the orders, sir. And I'm just praying that everything works out okay.
After hours of waiting, news that a Patriot missile intercepted the Scud.
All clear. All clear. All clear.
All clear until the next attack.
All day, every day, 24 hours a day, there was a threat that someone was going to try to, you know, come into the camp and either lob a grenade or come in with a rifle and start shooting people, that terrorists were going to attack the camp. So we had 24-hour security.
We had these great lenses that illuminate the night, and they were kind of a green picture, but they work under very low light conditions. So we were able to go out and use this technology to show what it's like in the middle of the night as the guards are protecting the camp.
There are now tens of thousands of American troops living in camps in the Kuwaiti desert, just like this one. Each one of these camps a tempting target for terrorists. And each evening, when the sun sets on the desert, the danger here grows. Major Robert Hudson is walking the perimeter tonight, checking the lines of defense.
Major Hudson.
First a challenge and password.
Yeah, save the drama for your mama.
After that, sir, come on in.
Cool.
Then some time with the 19 and 20-year-olds who are guarding the camp.
Hey, you guys know why you're out here? Roger. Why's that?
Protecting what's ours, sir.
Right, the perimeter. That's right. Exactly right. Protecting what's ours. But I can't stress enough, you know, make sure you scan over there. I mean, you're going to be able to see pretty much anybody coming from your left-hand side with that dark, you know, the darkness. Magazine well, not locked loaded, right? Okay, make sure you put that chin strap on, okay?
They are armed with rifles and machine guns. This is their first deployment.
It's not going to be a platoon coming across the berm. It's probably going to be 1 or 2 guys, probably with either a bomb or like an AK-47, and they come and they rip the side of the tent and they're back out.
They use night vision goggles to spot people sneaking across the desert.
It's not a high school football game anymore. It's a Super Bowl. Okay. And there are people very, very close to us right now that mean to do us harm.
More watching, more waiting, more worry, and the camp is quiet for another night.
There had already been a terrorist attack inside Iraq where a guard post had been approached and a suicide bomber had killed 4 American troops. So everyone had in the back of their minds the fact that was the beginning, that things were going to be more and more dangerous and that there would be other attempts.
Stay back!
So one night it happened. I mean, we're in our camp, we're in the middle of a meeting, the lights are on in the tent, it's a normal night, they're giving their sort of updates and different officers are giving their briefings, and all of a sudden automatic gunfire, machine gun fire from just outside the tent. And everyone thought the same thing, it's happening. Here they are, they've come.
This is what gunfire sounds like in the middle of the night, people scrambling to get down. Sitting in trenches on a moonless night, not knowing who is coming, only that someone has breached the perimeter.
Automatic fire. The driver got out and ran and disappeared. The driver is unlocated at this time.
This is the car that rammed the berm that surrounds Camp Thunder.
They tried screaming at him to stop, and there's a couple of barriers. We have some dirt out there on the road, and we have a higher berm, and then we have cement barriers. He busted through all 3 at about 65, 70 miles an hour, and they lit him up. The driver got out. They started to shoot at him because he was running at us.
At any other time, the driver of the car might not have been taken so quickly for a terrorist, but that all changed with recent terrorist attacks.
A couple of checkpoints up north have had some suicide bombers, so we were worried that that's what it was primarily.
A security team wounded, then captured the driver, a man who, it turns out, may have hit the berm accidentally.
Wrong place, wrong time. That's what I think. I don't think he was a terrorist. I don't think he was a threat because we searched his car. There was nothing in it, and he's pretty shook up.
But the soldiers in the Persian Gulf these days are taking no chances. With the 101st Airborne, Dean Staley, Camp Thunder, Kuwait. Within a few short minutes, winds pushed sand, dust, and the soldiers inside the tent. The mood changed quickly.
Get your trash out front!
Rush! Rush! All the jobs no one else wants, Sergeant Ruda does with style.
Attention in the tent! Ground attack! Ground attack! Ground attack!
About 63 people in one tent. There's not a moment that you're absolutely alone. And you can't wander off and be alone because you're in a place that's relatively dangerous. You can't wander out beyond the confines of the camp. You know, they have berms or perimeters. And so you're sort of confined to this area with these people.
There are 200,000 American troops now stationed in the Middle East. 61 of them live in this tent at Camp Victory in the Kuwaiti desert. 61 people, one tent, no privacy.
Like a family, you know, we have our days, we get along, we have the days we don't. But we have to work together and we have to help one another out.
Came here to do our job, and so you just suck it up and drive on, deal with it.
They're waiting for their aircraft, waiting for the war to start, doing whatever they can to pass the time.
It's cramped, but you get irritated, you get tired of people, but it's all right. You start getting used to it.
Marion Potter is one of 9 women in the tent.
Sometimes it gets a little chauvinist. Too many guys, too much sex talk, you know. Sometimes you just want to shut them up. Sometimes you just want a couple girls around so but it's all right. It's not too bad. They stink. Especially Sergeant Jay, but that's okay.
Above all, they are waiting to go home.
I got a wife in Florida. I got 2 kids in Florida. They're all back in Florida.
No one in the tent knows when that will be.
It's very windy. It is terrible, and I want my mother.
It was almost laughable. I mean, the conditions over there, if it hadn't been dangerous, it would have just been laughable. We had no idea how severe they would be. Sandstorms that blew sand for 4 or 5 days straight, and you couldn't see, at times you couldn't see, 10 or 12 feet.
Okay, we're gonna come towards you right now, and I'm gonna have a flashlight, so look out for me, okay?
Is that him out there with the lights?
In the sandstorm, people get disoriented very quickly. You don't know which way you're walking. It's deafening. You're scared. It's dark. And so, it's all you can do is just get your bearing and find out which way you have to go to get back to camp.
Oh, we're getting a good dust storm right now.
It started with a steady breeze. Within a few short minutes, winds pushed sand, dust, and the soldiers inside the tent.
Yeah, baby!
The mood changed quickly. Word came, a 3-man patrol lost outside in what was suddenly a howling storm.
Hey, do I have a rhino?
No, you don't have a rhino.
Oh, shit. You don't have a rhino.
A rescue team armed with a radio, a GPS, and flashlights set out to find them.
Okay, we're gonna come towards you right now, and I'm gonna have a flashlight, so look out for me, okay?
Visibility just a few feet. Flashlights out here almost useless. The lost soldiers can't hear the horn, can't see these truck headlights. The wind out here, deafening. The lost soldiers call in coordinates, but none of it adds up. It's more than an hour before the lost patrol stumbles upon the main guard gate and make it back inside safely.
What am I gonna do next time? I'm gonna sit in that freaking foxhole. I'm just gonna stay put.
One long hour they will never forget.
We got stuck in this incredible storm that we coined the Mars storm because it was bright orange. If you can imagine what it's like before a tornado or a big storm, it's green. Well, over there, it's orange. And we were just in awe looking up. We were just dumbfounded by it all. And the next thing you know, in a blink, this mud rain came down, and we were just racing to get inside the helicopters. It took us, 5 seconds to run inside, and we were just caked with mud and rain. And it was 4:30 in the afternoon, and it was pitch black out. And it was just the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
In any good camp, there's always some good characters. Tell me about the greatest characters in your tent.
Well, Sergeant Ruda was one of the most amazing characters. Here's a guy who's sort of an everyman. He's a handyman. He does all of the jobs in the camp that no one else wants to do. He builds latrines, he digs ditches, he fixes generators, he wires, lighting in the tent, that sort of thing. And the truth is that they teased him, but they really liked him. Beneath the teasing, there was a real element of respect and affection for this guy.
Trash!
If the Army gave promotions to the people who work hardest at the least glamorous jobs,
You got your trash?
Sergeant Ruda would be a 4-star general by now.
Can you get your trash out front?
Trash!
Trash!
All the jobs no one else wants.
Once you get the nut tightened, you have to open up that panel door and make sure it's on 110 slant 240 phase.
Sergeant Ruda does with style.
Unscrew this. You gotta be smarter than the Paul.
What about these young guys, Serge?
I'm handling but they're good guys, though. They're good guys. The Comedy Club. Got Larry, Mo, and Curly.
Hey, Sir, what's this?
Russell. Okay.
Trash! Who's got trash?
The new Army. So professional.
Need a hole dug, you tell him to dig, you got to come back and stop him or he'll go to China. And I've said for a long time, never go to war without a Ruda.
No job is too low.
I'm gonna build a crapper, an outhouse. Very educational.
Along the way, Ruda has built friendships too.
I love the guy. I mean, he's like my best friend out here.
Has a heart of gold, and he's strong, and he just wants to constantly keep busy.
Hello, Chaplain. You got any trash?
Hey, you guys got trash?
He does it all with a smile.
Fresh! 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 Jokers over here. Jokers. Good guys, though. Good guys. They're my brothers.
I don't really do any of the great, wonderful things, but I keep them, let them do the great, wonderful things.
Which is why you never, ever go to war without a Ruta.
I know we're going to go support some forces that are stuck at a bridge or something like that, sir.
Hopefully it'll be all clear. That's pretty much what we're hoping. If it's not, we'll deal with it when it comes.
These people were a threat to the U.S., and the U.S. took action. And they brought these prisoners in, these Iraqi prisoners of war, into our camp.
Well, the 101st is an amazing outfit. I mean, this division, their specialty is air assault, picking infantry troops up at a given location, flying them in with their helicopters and delivering them right into the fight.
These are some of the best pilots in the world, not only, just the United States, but in the world. And these guys are flying 110 knots, about 15, 20 feet above the ground.
So it's a dangerous job. It's not an easy job. And, the pilots, every time they do one of those air assaults, are thankful when they get back safe.
The area that we're going to was notified to us about 2 hours ago.
Before sunrise at Camp Udari, last-minute planning for a mission to drop more than 1,000 infantry soldiers into the fight south of Baghdad.
I know we're going to go support some forces that are stuck at a bridge or something like that, sir.
Hopefully it'll be all clear. That's pretty much what we're hoping. If it's not, we'll deal with it when it comes.
Chucks 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Get them lined up, get them moving.
Hundreds of troops loaded down with heavy packs, all stuffed into aircraft.
You guys are going to be uncomfortable, but you guys are going to go in and kick some ass, right? Let's do it.
Flying hundreds of miles into Iraq. War gunners test fire their weapons. Every person on the ground now a potential threat. Aircraft so heavy they are forced to stop twice at remote fueling stations in the desert. After hours packed in the aircraft, the desert below gives way to farmland, then a lush river valley. An-Najaf, the headquarters for Saddam Hussein's Fedayeen forces, a place where just this morning suicide bombers killed 5 U.S. soldiers. Just seconds on the ground now for soldiers to find defensive positions. After days of planning and preparation, hours of travel, and just seconds on the ground, a new force is added to the fight.
The war came home to us in a brand new way one day when this truck full of prisoners and bodies pulled up in front of us. And we were working our way into Baghdad, Joe and I were. And in this truck, 7, 8 prisoners with bags over their heads, cloth sacks over their heads, their hands zip tied behind them, and 2 dead Iraqis in there, wrapped up just in a haphazard sort of way in plastic that they'd found out in the field. It had been a group of Iraqis who attacked a security patrol outside our camp.
It was really kind of eerie to see these dead people being pulled off the back of the supply truck into body bags. It really brought it home to us that this is real. People are dying here left and right. It was just sad. It's sad to see the casualties of war, whether they're Iraqis or Americans.
It was the most danger that I think we saw the whole time we were over there, in the sense that, in the sense of immediate danger. I mean, there were mortar rounds falling just a block from where we were.
Hello, Mohammed. How are you, sir?
Hello, fine, thank you.
Oh, that is good. Very good.
Upstairs to the east? Hey, to the east.
Joe and I got on the ground with the infantry soldiers in Karbala, and it's a tough job. I mean, we got to see what these guys do up close, and their job is to go get shot at and shoot back and find the bad guys and root them out. And it was the most danger that I think we saw the whole time we were over there, in the sense that, in the sense of immediate danger. I mean, there were mortar rounds falling just a block from where we were and blowing up houses. There were bullets whizzing overhead. And these soldiers were ready to kill people.
3rd Battalion, 502s, the Widowmakers, on the way to secure the city of Karbala. The path to Karbala leads through this garbage dump west of town. The fighting is already underway. By the end of the day, Charlie Company will have to secure this school building and the area around it.
Copy. Be advised, we're about a click and a half away from that position. How copy?
Charlie Company is taking fire. At this distance, impossible to tell enemy from curious onlooker. This is the sound of AK-47 fire. Then the American response. Under tank cover, Charlie Company reaches the school. It is abandoned.
Keep the windows in sight. Keep the windows in sight.
Fedayeen forces were here moments ago. Clothes, blankets left behind. Also here, ammunition and heavy firepower, RPG rockets and hundreds of mortars.
So what we're finding is exactly what we suspected, that the enemy is now holding up in the places that we normally say is off limits to our ROE.
Also in the school, anti-American propaganda.
I think they're poisoning the young kids' minds with this crap.
Go, 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 go.
In Karbala today, Charlie Company is winning ground. They are also winning hearts and minds.
Good, good, good. And Saddam Hussein, his dog.
We were a low priority with the Army, and it wasn't their job to get us back to our battalion after we left going to Karbala. Well, they kind of forgot about us for about 3 days, and it kind of forced our hand to take a chance. Basically, we had to go out and hitchhike, and we went out to the road right outside of our supply camp, and luckily the first vehicle stopped was this big bus.
Good evening, thanks for joining us. I'm Dean Staley aboard the USS Southbound.
We were reported missing for a couple of hours, and I know that our battalion was worried too because 2 journalists were killed in that time period. Dean drew a map on his hand and got directions from Karbala down to Ananjaf. It turned out to be a real eye-opening experience, meeting these wonderful people who took us right where we had to go. But it was a great feeling when we got back to our base camp, and we hugged each other and walked in and met our battalion.
It was an enormous display of anti-war and in some cases anti-American sentiment.
That old creature's going underwater, but that which is coming up is going to be brand new.
He is clearly loved here and hated.
It pisses me off. I'm sorry, it does.
Welcome back to Eyewitness to War. From the beginning of the conflict, the prize for the coalition forces was Baghdad, the Iraqi capital of 4 million people. A month after the war started, the U.S. Army had taken Baghdad, but it was still struggling to restore order. When our own Dean Staley and Joe Caffrey arrived in Baghdad, they learned firsthand what war does to a city and its people.
There was still fighting in Baghdad when we were there, sporadic sort of fighting, sporadic gunfire, certainly every evening, all evening. And some horrible things happened. There was a supply and ammunition depot that had an enormous explosion and actually ended up killing people, Iraqi people in the neighborhood nearby.
This is what people in one Baghdad neighborhood awoke to. A massive ammunition dump near their homes on fire. By evening, at least 6 dead, more than a dozen injured, and a single message for U.S. troops. The crowd, led by a Muslim cleric, blocked the path of American armor.
God will revenge upon us. God will take our revenge from them, and He's giving them an order to go. We are not satisfied at America at all. We are Islam. We want our government to be Islamic. They said we'll bring you freedom. The freedom that they bring, we don't want it. Let them take them.
It is not clear just how deep or wide the distrust of Americans runs among the Iraqi people. What is clear is that winning the peace will be much more complicated than winning the war.
You know, Saddam had become sort of a mythical figure, I think, to the Iraqi people in the sense that he had ruled for so long and with such brutality that there was a real, people wanted to know, they asked us, you know, is Saddam dead? Did the Americans kill him? And they, you know, people were asking us as though we had some special insight. So it was important for Joe and I to go to this place where, you know, Saddam may have been killed by the American bombing.
This is the house Saddam Hussein was believed to be visiting the afternoon the U.S. dropped a precision-guided bomb on it. This is the massive crater that was left. And these are the curious who have come from all across Baghdad. Everyone who comes to this site is asking the same question. Was Saddam Hussein, in fact, killed in this attack? But there is one family in Baghdad that doesn't care about the answer. They live right next door.
He says, I used to love this garden of mine, the flowers, and I used to take care of them, but now nothing is left.
Nada Fadel Salam Othman grew up here in the house her father built more than 50 years ago.
My nerves, my situation after the struck, I still now am feeling terrified. I can't eat, I can't drink.
This banner lists the members of the family who died next door. Fadel, her father, and her son survived. Their home did not.
It's very dangerous.
Ayad is 20. He grew up in this house.
This is my neighbor house. This is one part of the soil, and this is a bathroom. I think it's, I don't know, very miserable. I think it's a very horrible thing. This is my house. What can I say? I can't say anything. And what can I do? Furniture, like books, like...
What he does is pick through the damage, while his grandfather, a retired engineer, tries to fix the unfixable.
I'm very sad from my grandfather because sometimes he began to cry because he lived and he built this house from about 50 years ago. And sometimes he began to cry.
I don't blame anybody because this is something God wanted to happen and it's God's will.
No one here cares whether Saddam is alive or dead. Either way, they are left to pick up the pieces.
I thought that was enormously valuable. I mean, that we got to tell not just the military side, but that we got to speak with everyday Iraqis in Baghdad and talk to them in a very personal way about what they were feeling, what they were experiencing, what their daily lives had become since the fall of Saddam. And I think that gave a balance to our reporting that otherwise would have been missing.
You're in a very historic place today, the Tower of Babel.
Tell me about celebrating Easter outside of Baghdad.
There were probably 30 people that went in to be baptized on Easter, and it just seemed like they were so happy just to take a moment out of the war to do something so significant in their lives. They would be different people. Their faces would light up when they come out of the water.
Accepting God in the middle of war is it's a good time to find him, I think, because you know, you never know what's going to happen next.
This Easter Sunday, the soldiers of the 101st Airborne made a pilgrimage.
You know, it's one to get baptized, and then it's another thing to get baptized in Euphrates River, one of the most historical, you know, rivers in biblical terms.
With their fellow soldiers standing guard, the only sound of farmers' irrigation pump, they washed away their sins in the Euphrates. Near the site of the biblical city of Nineveh and the ancient Tower of Babel.
That old creature's going underwater, but that which is coming up is going to be brand new. I will be changed.
I baptize you, Christopher Pillow, in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
More than a dozen soldiers expressing a change.
From this point on, you know, I try to live a different life, more towards devoted to Christ, and trying to be a better Catholic.
A fear of, you know, letting go my sinful ways, I guess is the best way to describe it. And joy because I was embracing something that I know I should have embraced a very long time ago.
In the middle of a combat zone, a profound calm.
I feel like I finally found peace. And it's an amazing feeling. I've been lost for a very long time. And it's good to finally feel calm.
For these soldiers of the 101st Airborne, Easter Sunday, like no other. Dean Staley along the Euphrates River near Baghdad, Iraq.
What got us through that day was having a lot of the soldiers use our telephone. And just to hear them say to their wives and children, the first things out of their mouth was, I love you, And really, we got goosebumps just being able to do that for them.
We spent a lot of time on the streets of Baghdad, 6, 7 days in a row, and never really, I think, felt fearful in terms of, are we going to get shot at or kidnapped or that sort of thing. Every experience that we had on the streets of Baghdad was really about meeting Iraqis face to face through an interpreter and talking to them and getting their opinions. And they were enormously gracious, enormously candid, very kind, very civil. They'd answer your questions. They'd be very critical of the United States at times. Why isn't this fixed? Why don't we have electricity? Why no running water? But then they'd thank you. Thanks for letting us share our opinion. Thanks for letting the people back in the United States know how we're feeling.
This is our 12th battle, and we have had enough.
The Republican Guard, this is the storied fighting unit of Saddam's regime, this sort of elite fighting unit. And so it was amazing when we were at the Ministry of Defense and we met one of the officers. He was a communications officer who was out front.
He was calm. He was felt at ease that, we didn't fight. We put our weapons down. We helped the U.S. defeat Saddam.
And just like we fought in FAO, in the Iranian war, and we gave 70 people died for getting back a small island, and then after the war, the Iranians retook the island. It says we have had enough of loss, of losing wars.
He really wanted to take credit for the fall of Saddam. He wanted to make it known that it wasn't just the Americans coming to fight, but it was also the fact that we laid down our guns, that we decided not to show up for the fight.
When people realized that Saddam was gone, they were just so relieved. They would hold up his picture and spit on it. They would take their shoes off and bang it against his picture, which is the biggest insult they could.
These were people who were snatching up satellite dishes off the streets, which before had been illegal, using satellite phones, which had been illegal, and gathering around a camera, a TV camera on the street, in big crowds would form. And they all wanted to get their 2 cents in.
This is what freedom sounds like in Iraq. Shia Muslims honoring the Prophet Hussein. A month ago, they would have been thrown in jail for such a gathering. This is what freedom looks like. People snatching up once illegal satellite dishes. Vendors renting time on satellite phones.
The people who come and use these telephones are ordinary Iraqi families, and they use the telephone to call their relatives, their sons, their friends all around the world, because this telephone was not available in the past.
The new freedoms here in Iraq have not come without a cost. Virtually every aspect of daily life here is more difficult today than it was before the fall of the regime. Just ask Amjad Hial and his friends. Before the war, he worked in a factory. Now he's forced to scavenge aluminum from what's left of the Ministry of Agriculture.
It is so dangerous, but what can we do? There is no work, there is no money, and we have to live.
The few who are working are still waiting to be paid.
We are barely eating. We don't have enough money, and the month is over, and our money is going to be spent all over.
With no police force, many here feel less safe than they did under Saddam's regime.
The most important thing that we want is secure, and we want to feel secure.
A free Iraq is moving forward toward an uncertain future.
One of the most remarkable soldiers we met was this guy with the 502nd Infantry of the 101st Airborne. Infantry guy doing one of the most dangerous jobs in the war, walking the streets of Karbala with his rifle. And he carried underneath his flak vest a poem from his daughter. And it was amazing because I think that story speaks to the isolation that the troops feel. I mean, he's more than 7,000 miles away from his daughter, and he understands her pain and her worry, and there's nothing he can do about it but read her poem and react to it and think about the time that he'll get back to her.
The infantry soldiers of Charlie Company walk carefully through the streets of Karbala. All of them carry flak jackets, all carry rifles. Russell Kimball is carrying the radio, and tucked under his flak vest, Staff Sergeant Thomas Smith carries a question.
I watch you gently kiss her goodbye, then you come to hug me. I watch you wipe a tear from your eye, hoping this is not the last I'll see of you. Basically, my 13-year-old daughter asking why I have to go, and why can't somebody else?
A question in the form of a poem 13-year-old Chelsea gave to him as he left for the Persian Gulf.
Being a small child in wonder, I simply nod my head. But now that I've grown a bit, I understand what was said. The bus is leaving slowly. I clutch my heart in brief despair. I want to keep you for myself, but I know that wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be fair for those you protect, those you pledge your life to every day. I know it wouldn't be fair, so I cry silently and pray. It's hard. You know, it's hard on the families back home, it's hard on us. And it's my job. And she's finally coming to realize what my job is. Her being a teenager and me being hard-headed the way that I am and stuff, it just doesn't, you know, parents and teenagers just don't get along a lot of times.
Halfway around the world, Staff Sergeant Smith carries the questions from home close to his heart.
You know, I love you mean a lot, but this is gold. I know what I'm going through, and God only knows what they're going through. Dear Lord, please forgive me for these thoughts I cannot wish away. Dear Lord, please try to help me. To let me let go of my father today.
Stop the war! Impeach Bush!
I'm a little worn out, you know. Wish we could look forward to a beer in Kuwait, but it's a beerless town.
Had some sense when we were on the ground in the Gulf about the peace protests, but I don't think it was until we got back that we really realized just how broad they had been and how well organized and how many people had been involved.
Stop the war! Impeach Bush! Get Bush out of office!
We did have the sense, though, from the American soldiers that they were concerned about the peace protests. I mean, they were concerned that there was this large contingent of Americans and others around the world who opposed the war. It was clear to us just talking to them that they wanted to find weapons of mass destruction. You know, they were looking for some vindication in that sense. They had a very clear sense of purpose about wanting to depose Saddam Hussein, but they also wanted to find the smoking gun. They also wanted to say, you know what, guys, they really did have these weapons.
How good an idea is it to have reporters embedded in those dangerous situations?
The embedding process is invaluable. I mean, as a reporter, all you really want is access. You want to get close to the story. You don't want second, third person. You want first-person accounts of what's going on. You want people speaking directly to you. And you want the ability to know when they're telling the truth or when they're exaggerating. You want to know the story for yourself so that when you have some sort of context for what's being told.
It's only going to take an hour to get to Exxon.
For the most part, we had unbelievable access. I mean, we were in all the top secret briefings, all of the missions that were upcoming. We gained trust within our battalion where they allowed us to know and see just about everything that went on.
We were never told we couldn't shoot anything. We were always able to shoot anywhere we wanted to. If it was a mission, they found a place for us on it. A supply run, they coordinated that for us.
There was one sticky moment where I was talking to our lieutenant colonel about the possibility that someone might get hurt and that we might have to report on that. And I wanted to be clear with her that those were our intentions and that was part of our job. And she was defensive. You know, her reaction was, you're here by invitation. You know, those aren't stories that I necessarily want told. And she had to be made to understand, you know, that's our job. We didn't come here, and I told her that. We didn't come here just to tell the happy stories. You know, we came here prepared to tell all of the stories. I think it's a fair criticism to say that we got close to our subjects. I mean, that's obvious. You know, I think the American viewers are smart enough to know that that was a slice of it. That was a slice of the story. That was a slice of the war. And then if you want to be really informed about the larger picture, you need to, watch our stories about individual troops. You have to understand the context that we're living with these people and telling their stories.
Is it worth it?
Worth every minute of it. There's no doubt. I mean, this was an amazing experience. It was miserable at times. It was dangerous at times. It was frustrating at times. But I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, so you can write. Yeah, well, we got sent packing.
The 5th Battalion was given a new mission today, make sure Geraldo Rivera leaves Iraq.
Geraldo had given away positions in the sand, and that was the first thing we were told not to do, was not to give away positions or not to give away specific numbers of soldiers.
And he just sort of showed up on our doorstep one day in the desert. Joe and I were busy working on a piece, and we looked up, and there was Geraldo climbing out of a Humvee in the middle of the desert. I mean, literally hundreds of miles from anywhere.
We're a little worn out, you know. Wish we could look forward to a beer in Kuwait, but it's a beerless town, as you'll see.
See you later.
Thanks,
good luck to you.
As they loaded his equipment, Geraldo said goodbyes, signed autographs. He is clearly loved here and hated.
It pisses me off. I'm sorry. It does. For somebody like him to come over here and then endanger the kids and the people that are over here fighting for the United States of America is just wrong. I mean, I'm glad they're kicking him out of Iraq. I think it's a good thing. The Army reacted in the proper manner, and soon the helicopter from our battalion, 5th Battalion, 101st, will fly him back to Udara, and he can get on some other plane and go on his merry way.
Geraldo told us he expects to return to Iraq. His fans will have to stay tuned. With the 101st Airborne, Dean Staley in the Iraqi desert.
Dean and Joe, heading home. We're gonna miss you 'cause you're taking the phone.
I think there's still a lot of unanswered questions about what the future is in that country, and I think it's going to be dangerous there for a very long time for American troops.
Yeah, all we want for these people to come home safe, our friends.
Tonight, Dean Staley and Joe Caffrey are home safe from the war in Iraq. They've left behind a country that's struggling to get on its feet. There are more than 140,000 American troops still stationed in the Persian Gulf. They are fighting to maintain control of Iraq. Just this week, U.S. forces launched a new operation against pockets of resistance. They call it Operation Desert Scorpion. The cost of the war can be measured in lives. Since the beginning of the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq, more than 200 coalition troops have died, and the cost is ongoing. In the last 3 weeks alone, at least 10 American soldiers have been killed in attacks. The civilian costs have been much greater. The best estimates put the number of Iraqi civilians killed during the war at somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000. And there are lingering questions about the war. Did it make us safer as a nation? Is it possible to install a democracy in Iraq? And where are the weapons of mass destruction the United States promised it would find? Some of those questions, no doubt, will take some time to answer. We leave you tonight with a few final thoughts from Eyewitness News reporter Dean Staley and photojournalist Joe Caffrey.
I think it's a life-changing experience in the sense of, never again will you be that close to, that large a conflict. Never again will you be seeing first person what it's like when a major power goes to war like that. So it's hard to go through that and not be changed in some way. If in no other way than just understanding, you have this broader understanding about things.
I think what we've learned from this experience is how valuable life is, and how good we have it over here in the U.S., and how hard it is in other parts of the world, and how people really look out for each other.
I think we were both absolutely astounded by the amount of support that we got. I mean, people, emailing us and writing us and sending us care packages. People we didn't know sent us care packages and said, thanks for the work you're doing. People keeping us in their thoughts and their prayers and putting us in prayer circles, and just unbelievable.
Yeah, it really gave us a lot of energy just when we were down and we'd been working for weeks and tired. Just to get an email or a care package from somebody, it was really uplifting. It really meant quite a lot to us.
And that's what keeps the troops going too.
We know that the threat is still very high, that it's a bad environment, and that danger is still very prevalent over there. So we do worry about our people.
And it makes you wonder about the commitment, I mean, I think it's a good time to sort of reflect on, are these commitments sustainable? Are they something that we should be doing? I think it's almost your duty as an American to sort of question, these sorts of missions. And I think it's still a lot of unanswered questions about what the future is in that country. And I think it's going to be dangerous there for a very long time for American troops.
Yeah, all we want for these people to come home safe, our friends.